Hello and welcome to another Times Radio Members Question and Answer. Today we're answering comments from our channel members on frontline episodes and other videos about the war in Ukraine and its impact on the world stage. I'm Philip Ingram. I currently present Times Radio Frontline, but I'm a former senior British military intelligence officer and commentator on all things geopolitics, defence, security, cyber, and anything else that people ask me to. So I'm going to get straight into your questions today. Marty, first question is from you, and you say Russia's ally Iran could go all-out war mode and close off the Straits of Hormuz, which would spike the oil price, thus making Putin more money with his oil sales. Should they do that? I reckon that would be the swift end of the Iranian Navy, as there's too many interests that want to keep the waters open. Well, Marty, I think you've answered your own question. You've hit the nail on the head. And when we had the discussions around the Iranians potentially doing that, comments came out from China, or that were attributed to China, because China gets about 45% of its oil and gas through the Straits of Hormuz. So that would have had a major impact on them. They are an ally, I use that term loosely, of Iran. They're certainly in a position to put a lot of pressure on them. But we've got between 20 and 30% of the world's oil and gas going through the Straits of Hormuz. We saw the start of a spike in oil prices across the globe whenever the discussion was going on, and of course the Iranian parliament voted to close the Straits of Hormuz. But I think you're right, the Iranians realised that they would lose not just their conventional navy, but the navy, the naval element of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. And I think they were caught out by just how good the American attack was and how they didn't see it. So that was definitely a concern. Marty, you come in again and you say it would be interesting to see the contracts between DPRK, North Korea, and Russia, or the entities signatory to them. Same for the Russo-Chinese contracts. From what you've heard over time, DPRK, North Korean, supplies two main things: shells for artillery and personnel. The first obviously just gets used up unless Ukraine can destroy incoming shipments. From the initial about 12k troops, about a third got captured, killed in the Kursk Oblast's operation. That leaves about 8,000 North Korean personnel available to eventually return home to teach their own army, unless they get deployed again in Sumy or Kharkiv. Well, yes, North Korea, they have supplied 12,000 troops. Those troops are getting combat experience, and that combat experience will go back into North Korea. They're also supplying, as you said, artillery shells and rockets. Some of the ballistic missiles that the Russians are using are North Korean ballistic missiles. And I've seen pictures and had reports of North Korea starting to supply other military materiel, and in particular field artillery, self-propelled field artillery. That's suggesting that the Russians are in an even worse position than we thought they were beforehand. The Russian-Chinese contracts are more interesting. I think the Chinese are supplying more dual-use goods. They don't want anything that can be directly related back to China because they don't want Western sanctions against Chinese companies, and they're being very careful at what they're doing. Personnel, there's talk about more people coming from North Korea. I think Kim Jong-un would quite happily supply more people because he's getting paid quite a handsome sum per person that's there. So it wouldn't surprise me if more are going in. But the fact that Vladimir Putin is relying on military materiel and personnel from North Korea, I wouldn't put a North Korean shell in a gun and stand anywhere near it when you pull the lanyard and let it go off. Reliability would be an issue. And when we have to question, what is North Korea getting out of it themselves, apart from just access to international money? Kim Jong-un is laughing all the way to the bank, definitely, but I think he's laughing all the way to more advanced missile and potentially nuclear technology. That's the interesting relationship that there is, more interesting than the Chinese-Russian relationship. And I think we're seeing Xi Jinping sitting on the fence as much as he can do with that. So Nick, you give us the next point and say, interesting stuff, but do you think Putin is saying to Iran that just offering to go to the table will stop Trump in his tracks for months and months? Of course, you're talking about the phone call that happened between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, where Vladimir Putin suggested that he acted as an intermediary in the Iran-Israel conflict for Donald Trump to turn around and say, no, I don't want you to focus on Iran, I want you to focus on Russia and Ukraine and come to some form of peace there. I think Putin's just trying to play Trump. I think he got it wrong. He misjudged it there. He thought, if I come in and suggest I'm a peacemaker, Donald Trump is going to roll over and say, tickle my tummy. I don't think that happened. And actually, I'm detecting an increasing frustration in Donald Trump that might turn into something a little bit stronger, and that frustration's with Vladimir Putin. The coming days and weeks are going to be very interesting, I think, from a Putin perspective and Putin's relationship with Trump. Walter, you come in with the next point and say, surely Putin's Russia will end up like Iran if they attack NATO or the Baltics, etc., because we all have rules and language that can't be taken or destroyed by tyrants like Putin. I don't think Putin really has any intention of conventionally attacking the Baltic states, which are NATO countries, or any other NATO country. He can have the effect that he wants to have in creating political turmoil, economic disruption, and other things through his grey zone activities. We've only just got in the UK press today, when we're recording this, which is Thursday, commentary on the Russians being behind a lot of the criminal gangs that are pushing the cross-channel migrants or asylum seekers into the UK, and that is giving us political turmoil. It's costing us an awful lot of money. It's costing an awful lot of political capital in trying to debate it, not just internally, but with our European neighbours and everything else. So it's something that they'll do. I think Putin will increase his grey zone activity, this sub-threshold outside conventional military activity, because I don't think he's got anything militarily left from a conventional perspective, and he doesn't want to stimulate what has now been recertified at the NATO conference in Article 5, and Donald Trump helped underpin that. So next question from Anthony. Another spat in the Middle East, I don't care. Meanwhile, Putin masses invasion-sized forces on the borders of the Baltics. I'm sure we could be more worried about that. Yeah, I've seen those reports as well. He's building bases there. Now, you don't build military infrastructure for something that you're going to use for an immediate military operation. You're creating a strategic dilemma. You're putting it in different places to try and split people's defences and everything else. He's making a statement. But that statement that he's making is with military infrastructure. Whether he's got the troops and the capability to put into that military infrastructure, there's a lot of assumptions in the reports that we've seen coming out. I don't think he has. But once the infrastructure is built, and that can take a couple of years, this could be part of a regeneration plan for the Russian military. And of course, we've seen Vladimir Putin say that he's increasing the size of the Russian military, and this could be where he's going to try and do that and build it up before he then takes it and rotates it through or sends it in to Ukraine. Putin is thinking a couple of years ahead. We're not there yet, and I don't think there's a threat to the Baltics in the same sort of way just yet. Grey zone warfare, bigger threat than conventional warfare. Steve, you're next. My question is, aren't the Arab states, Jordan, Saudi Arabia and Iraq, allowing Israel to cross their airspace? Aren't the Arab states facilitating the Israeli attack on Iran? They're doing more than just facilitating. In many cases, they've helped. We've had Jordan, we've had Iraq help defend Israeli airspace whenever the Iranians have been firing missiles back. They have actually helped intercept them. Saudi Arabia has been supportive of the international commitments to help protect Israel from Iranian attacks and elsewhere. And I will turn the question back. Isn't it interesting that a lot of the Arab nations are not attacking Israel behind closed doors? They will do publicly, but that's just the way politics works in the region. But what they're not doing is supporting the Palestinian cause or the other causes where they're taking refugees or they're putting sanctions on Israel, or they're putting sanctions on countries that support Israel. I think if you look at Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and other Middle Eastern countries, including the UAE, they're quite happy with what Israel is doing against Iran. And we have to remember that the conflict that is going on in the Middle East, whilst it's being fought out between different countries and by a lot of different proxies in those countries, effectively is a Sunni Shia civil war that's been going on for centuries, with Iran on one side, Saudi Arabia on the other side. And of course, the difficulty that there is in the middle is the State of Israel that was created long after that Sunni Shia civil war started. And Marty, you're going back to last week's Q&A, and you're giving me a correction. Hi Philip, a small correction. The GBU-57, the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP, weighs about 13 tonnes in total. Indeed, and most of that is hardened, high-strength, high-yield steel and shell. The actual explosive is about 2 to 4 tonnes. I think I was misspeaking when I suggested it was 13 tonnes of high explosives, and I probably said that phrase. Marty, you're perfectly correct. Thank you for watching. Thank you for correcting. And please, if anyone else picks stuff up, feel free. Correct me, and I will quite happily acknowledge you for doing that, because I do get slightly loose with my language at times. But hey folks, thank you for watching this week's question and answers and posting your questions. Remember, if you want access to exclusive videos and have your questions answered, sign up for Times Radio membership. Oh, and by the way, you can get us on your favourite podcast channel. Just go to your favourite podcast channel and search for Times Radio Frontline, and we're on there now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.